Good evening, good morning, good night, good day to all you guys watching this transmission. Welcome to another very special edition of Trends in the Housing Market. It is I, Mike Martins, bringing you stories from all over the housing market, all over the housing world. And today is December 14th, 2017, broadcasting from Merritt, British Columbia. And it is your humble host, Mike Martins. And I'm here to bring you news from everywhere. Remember, this is non-scripted, guys, and I do this off the fly. We'll have open lines a bit later, and for people to call in that want to call in, we'll have open lines going on. And people are logging in already in the comment section and saying hello, and I say hello back to everyone in the comment section. Our comments section has been on fire the last couple of shows with a lot of people logging in through about mid-show. And I want to wish everyone a good evening, good night that are logging in right now. And for the people that are picking up this transmission and rebroadcasting it through some podcasty thing, thanks a lot. I appreciate that. And for the people in Australia and New Zealand, transmitting a lot of my discussions or talks or ideas, I want to thank those people too for taking my program and using what they need, because we need to solve this housing issue. We're living in a really precarious time. It's bizarre. We're living in a time where you could work 2 full-time jobs and you still can't afford to live. And a majority of it is because a majority of what we make goes towards living expenses, and that is shelter. Shelter is a basic shelter. 30, 40 years ago, there was so much availability. You could go rent anywhere. There's for rent signs on every block corner. People talking about rentals. People downsizing. Believe it or not, people back in the 70s and 80s. Wow, I'm paying $400 for rent. Louis offering $250. I'm going to move in there and I got more space. That's how it was back then. Now, you're lucky if you could even get a closet to rent out. You know what I'm saying? I'll have open lines in a bit, so you got nobody panic or freak out. I want to thank everyone for also in the comments there. I'm reading your comments as we go along here. I want to kick off today's show with somebody asked me the other day. Actually, I want to kick this off in an email. Why am I so tied to housing? Why is housing so important to me? Well, I'm not going to say to me now. I'm going to say for everybody. And I'll tell you why housing is important for everybody. Because with housing, people live in communities. And we don't have that anymore. So, and someone's asking me how my diet's coming along. Diet's coming along really good. And you can watch that in my Rants and Lifestyle. I'm talking about eating different foods and stuff, and I've been on a sugar-free, what's the other one, and carbs. So I'm liking it. I'm losing some weight. I feel good. Everyone's noticing it, which is really good. And all right, let's kick this off. We got to kick off New Zealand. This was posted 5 hours ago. This is a really good article by The Independent. New Zealand bans foreigners from buying homes as housing crisis escalates. Housing Minister Phil Twyford said first-time buyers and families are currently being forced out of the housing market. Well, this has been happening for the last decade. I don't know if anyone's just woken up to this, so let's check this little sunny suburb here of New Zealand. Houses in New Zealand's capital, Wellington. Property prices have risen by 57% over the last decade. Hagan Hopkins, Getty Images. So thanks for the image, bud. A nice little suburb there of the downtown area. Legislation to ban foreigners from buying homes in New Zealand will be introduced. So we've been talking about this for the last 3 months. It's a crucial, 2 months, 2 months. Because this was introduced at the end of September, and then into November they passed some law, whatnot. Anyways, legislation, so they're looking at this and what's going on, and a lot of countries are sitting back and they're just like ready to see what happens with this because this is huge. So if you just tuned in, article says this is a big deal. New Zealand bans foreigners from buying homes. In a move that could become a test case for other nations. Wow, this article is reading my mind. Suffering housing shortages. The country will only allow those who hold a residential visa to buy existing homes. I think that's very fair. I'm very sure there's a lot of countries in the world like I can't go to. I just can't go buy a house. They'll probably let me buy the house, take my money, and then kick me out. Like, no one's going to let me. Where can you go and just buy a house? It means overseas developers and individuals who have to build a new home if they want to purchase residential property. The ban will come into effect early next year. The country's housing minister, Phil Twyford, and land information minister, Eugene Sage, said purchases of homes by offshore speculators push first-time home buyers and families out of the housing market, said Mr. Twyford. The legislation in design to tackle rising property prices in New Zealand, which have fueled the housing crisis and pushed homelessness rates to the highest in the developed world. So New Zealand's been on a roller coaster right now. Woo! With its housing crisis. Six-figure income, people making six-figure income. It's crazy. Can't even make a down payment. 20 years ago, people talking about, like, oh, I'm going to be I'm going to be this, I'm going to be a lawyer, you're making the money. You can't even put a down payment on a house. Got people in the comment section. It's me, Teresa, and Tammy here. We came up last summer. Yes, come back and see me again. And we'll play some games, talk business. So a lot of people do come in and see me at the shop, at the Maritoys and Games where I'm at, and drop by and just come and see me. And it's really good. I like it. I like meeting people. And everyone that watches this channel or comments and kind of sees what I'm up to, we're all on this kind of the same wavelength. We see the same. We kind of understand what's happening in the markets. We took a step back and watched the game go. You know what I'm saying? Hi. Hey, my son's here. Hey, Antonio. Oh. Anyways, the legislation is designed to tackle rising property prices in New Zealand, which have fueled a housing crisis and pushed homelessness rates to the highest in the developed world. The issue dominated October's elections, which saw Labour Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern ending 9 years of government by the Conservative National Party. It will mean, for practical purposes, that foreign buyers will not be able to buy residential properties unless they are either increasing the number of residents and then selling them for converting the land to other use. They will need to be able to show that this will have a wider benefits to the country, Ms. Sage said. Okay, I'm putting on Antonio's socks here. Yeah? Yeah, and a lot of people are holding back because they can't afford the living situation, so they're holding back on having children. People are holding back and starting a family. And I think the best thing that put me in line in my life or put me into a better perspective of what's going on was to basically start a family. And I think starting a family completes your life. That's me, you know. A lot of people are anti-family, and I've been seeing a lot of videos of women saying, "I regret starting a family. I wish I never had kids." I see there's YouTube videos like that. I'm like, yeah, that's a topic for another time. And so, what's happening? Property prices have increased 57% over the last decade. This is in New Zealand, so New Zealand's been out of control as the country has become an attractive destination for super rich and for Chinese investors. Around 40,000 people in New Zealand, or 1% of the population, are living on the streets. 40,000 people? on the streets, like 40,000. And that's the New Zealand proper. That's the people's, like, the parent, like, these people in the streets, their parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, basically built the infrastructure, or built the country for what it is today, and basically are now their kids and grandkids. No one's looking at it like that metaphor, like that kind of outside look. You know what I'm saying? Are on the streets. Are living on the streets or in emergency accommodation, according to Yale University study published in July. So, now, in New Zealand, one interesting thing is the government's been putting up people in hotels on a regular basis. A lot of people have been going into hotels, and families have been in hotels. And that's nice that at least they're noticing the problem and putting people up and putting them in emergency accommodations, which is really nice. And there will be exceptions to the new rules for those who can prove that their purchase will increase housing supply. For example, by increasing the number of residents within a property in order to sell it on afterwards. So basically, if you have 3-4 kids, you don't have enough space in your home, you have to prove that so you can sell your property and buy. That's really good. Instead of having 10,000, adeus. That's like having 10,000 empty properties lying around, 30,000 empty properties across New Zealand lying around and basically empty. And 40,000 people are living on the streets. It's disgusting to see, and it's sad that it's happening. You know what I'm saying? So let's keep going here. So let's see what happens with New Zealand. I'm going to keep on New Zealand, guys, the whole time, because other countries, and look at this, 4 shares. Are you serious? 4 shares, 0 comments. Come on, guys, get this out there. It's a really good, hey, look at this guy's hair. Anyways, yeah, let's move on here. So this was sent to me. There's a ruling party here in British Columbia called the New Democratic Party that was elected 6 months ago. They're working their best to try and solve the housing crisis in the BC. Here's John McComb's show. You can go ahead and listen to this if you want. The article, if you're into the whole political side of things, the John Horgan promises housing tax changes that will affect demand in February budget. So guys, tune into that. See what the mayor or housing minister and all those other people have in store for BC, because I read the article, I listened to the podcast. It's very interesting because people coming in with hockey bags full of cash and laundering money through casinos. And people knew this was happening, but it's just like if I walked into a casino with a hockey bag, never mind if it's full of money, I'd probably get taken down at the door or probably get searched or probably be asked to leave the property. There are many functions or places I went in Vancouver where I was asked to leave the property for no reason. I would walk in a restaurant, I'd look around, oh, this looks like a nice place, and then I'd have somebody come up to me and say, sorry, sir, we have no seating available and half the restaurant's empty. I've had incidents like that all the time. Like a couple of others, I don't want to mention right now, but other incidences like that, you know, but walking around with a hockey bag full of cash, I mean, that's ludicrous. I believe it's happening, but it just, like, if it was me, I probably wouldn't make it 2 blocks down the road. Probably get jumped by somebody or taken down by the police or searched or something, but some people could do it, right? Stats Can unveil foreign investors' data on Toronto, Vancouver housing markets. What is the snail pace movement, molasses movement, slow movement of them unveiling investor data? Why can't they just unveil investor data and give us an insight on what's going on? You know what I'm saying? Like, this needs to be addressed. People need to understand what is going on with who is buying the market. Don't people have a right to know who's buying these homes or why half their block is completely abandoned? Why all these retail strip malls are shutting down? You know what I'm saying? So, Stats Can't unveil for, so, ooh, they're unveiling it. It's like, I think StatsCan will unveil this investor data after the poop hits the fan. They won't do it now. They won't do it now because it's not the right thing to do right now, right? A sold sign in front of a house for sale in Toronto suburb of Vaughan, May 24th, 2017. StatsCan will release fresh data on foreign investment in Toronto and Vancouver the next week. Okay, well, I'll sit back and wait a week and we'll read it in the next week's show if they release it. Ottawa, routers. Fresh data on foreign investment in Toronto and Vancouver will be released next week in a move economists hope will shed light on what is driving demand and potential bubble in the country's housing market. While the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corp has said foreign investment accounts for only about 10% of sales activity, policymakers and voters alike have seized on the issue as a driving force behind precarious markets in both cities. Statistics Canada, $39.9 million 5-year project to better measures the market using land registers and tax records, among other data like electricity bills and other stuff that's kicking around. So, okay, Margaret O'Brien is commenting here. She says, same in New Zealand, the government did not want the people to know who was buying, set the data parameters very narrow to get results it wanted. So, hold on, let me close the door here. It's really cold coming in this. My cat's in here running around now, so I had the door closed, but that's okay. I got a visit from my son. And, okay. So, yes, it's almost like this is like probably more top secret information than like, I mean, if I came around with North Korean defective, like, news, important news of North Korea, huge top secret material that could change our world, they'll look at it and say, yeah, go ahead, nobody cares, go talk about it. But when it comes to housing data and housing market, it's a problem. It's like, why don't they want us to know what's going on? So we'll wait next week. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. We'll wait next week. Scapegoat foreign buyers, house tax, CMA. Watch, don't scapegoat foreigners for Canada's housing prices. So that's what they're saying here. It's a good thing that this is coming, but it would have been better to have it years ago. Government policy has been reactive, whether they had evidence or not to base a reaction on, said David Mandini, senior economist with Capital Economics. The most obvious example of policy made without proof of need for it is the 15% foreign buyers tax levied in Toronto and Vancouver in 2017 and 2016, respectively, by provincial governments under pressure to do something about the soaring housing prices. While tax initially dampened sales in both Toronto and Vancouver, demand has come trickling back. Really? Confirming the conviction that those who said foreign buyers were never behind the housing boom. We assume it is foreign ownership increasing the price of housing. But is it true? Comment below. I want to know, guys, in the comments. Is it true? So people are commenting. Welcome to the show, people. It's really hot here in Auckland. Well, it's freezing here. But is it true? So we assume that it is foreign ownership increasing the price of housing, but is it true? That is the main question. The big question are still there. We don't. You know what? Maybe even if it is, they won't release it. They'll lie. I have a feeling. How can you even trust anybody? Like, you know. Let's say we do this. We create a private, not a private, but a public sector, but privately owned by millennials and first-time wannabe home buyers that want to buy into the market. Everybody funds $2 a month towards this private organization that is hired by a board of directors like us. We just say, okay, you're going to do this. You're going to check the electricity and find out who's got electric. You're going to find out who's got cable. You're going to find out who's been paying. What's this? What's that? And then we fund a private entity to go out and do this information for us and bring it back. I know a lot of people that want to buy into the housing market. A lot of people that are in the housing market. They're not sure what to do. A lot of people that are in over their heads. They would want to know this information. But because we're so dependent on other sources to get this information, it's making it so hard for us to know what is happening. So someone's commenting here, when I did have money to buy a house, they were cheap. Now I have some money, they are overpriced. But you know what? It's not that they're worth that much. It's that they're overpriced. When the houses were cheap, when you had money, that's what they were worth. You know? Like people are saying, "Oh, yeah, I know you're showing that house in Florida with 7,000 square feet and 10 bedrooms. Houses in Florida, you know, that house is $890,000. That house is cheap, okay? I admit that to you. But no, it's not that the house is cheap. It's what it's worth. And people are overpaying for what things are worth anymore. People have been in this delusional way of thinking, believing that home prices will completely keep going up and there's nowhere to go but up. So, while the unknowns of foreign buyers is the highest profile gap in the data, Lockrix hopes to tackle many others, including where buyers get their down payment. See, that's fantastic, but are they going to really release this? How many homes are vacant? That's key. Everyone, the mayor of London isn't getting over this. Let's build ourselves out of this housing crisis. So London right now is taking all their green space and building. They're getting rid of gardens. They're getting rid of parks. They're getting rid of everything to build out of this housing crisis. And no, that's not what it is. And that's what I think it isn't either. It's not. Anyways, building out of them, never mind. Hopes to tackle many were vacant. How many demands come from investors and speculators, and how much prices have actually been rising? So we're going to look at this for StatsCan. I'm going to keep my eyeball on this for next week and see what's going on, because we deserve to know. Now this one, listen to this. High BC housing demand, prices fueled by strong economy. So people living in British Columbia. I live in British Columbia myself. Most western province of Canada. Is there a huge economic boom happening here? If somebody wants to comment in the comments or comment section if watching from BC, or if somebody wants to leave a comment after this is on rebroadcasted. Is there a strong, powerful boom economy happening here? I know the softwood lumber, they shut down a few lumber mills here in town. I know they've had problems with softwood lumber. What's the other one? Mining issues. So it says here, Vancouver, the British Columbia Real Estate Association says a strong economy has pushed up demand and prices for housing in the province compared with last year. So the association's latest report says 7,731 sales were recorded by the multiple listing service in November, 20.4% increase from November 2016. The average price was $723,000, up 15.5% from the same period last year. So Buddy here is saying demand for houses is being supported by a large number of millennials entering the market and some buyers completing purchases in advance of tighter mortgage rules of the new year. So London, so basically someone's commenting, London mayor equals Agenda 21. Again, True data about occupancy of property. Many houses are being used as store of wealth, never occupied. For sure. For sure. So in the comment section, I would like to know if BC is going through this fueled by this powerful booming economy. I need to know, because maybe I'm living in a matrix, because I don't know what's going on, because I'm just watching the trend, watching what's going on, and I'm being told something else continuously, like a broken record. I keep getting told one thing, and then the funny part is, you know, when you're growing up, you are taught all your life, your whole life, how things are supposed to be done in a certain way, and then I've gotten to an age now, or a time in my life, that I'm noticing everyone's going against everything we were taught to do right in the first place. It's like, I don't know. That's another topic for another discussion. I might get Rants and Lifestyle Show back up so we could talk about stuff with like Bitcoin and what's happening with what. And let me know if you guys want to do that. Okay. So, Andrew is commenting here, the elite don't want us to own anything. They want a renter's economy where few actually own anything. I'm from Windsor, somebody's commenting. I'm from Windsor, Canada, and work as a bricklayer. The majority of houses I build are for retired people. That's okay, that's good. These people built, or basically created, the infrastructure for Canada, you know, you could get to your job. You know, when you stop at a red light, you could thank them, like, hey, you know, thanks for building us this infrastructure over the last 40 years. You know what I'm saying? And that's good. I like that. And Gan is saying it is media's bull. They write something to attract attention, need not necessarily the truth. And that's what I was talking about earlier in my video I made this morning discussing 20, 30 years ago, before we could fact check, you know, now we could fact check. I could tell you who played golf in 1964 in Florida. I could tell you who played in what championship. All the players now, you could fact check on the internet like this. But now nobody is doing the fact checking anymore. I'm seeing the media really getting lazy and not fact checking these things. And back in the day, we couldn't fact check. Back in the day, we had no idea. We could go over and look at some 12, 13-year-old encyclopedia set we would have sitting on the shelf, pull it out and try to fact, you know, what it's saying in the encyclopedia. But in all fairness, it's really hard, you know what I'm saying, to know what's coming our way, you know what I'm saying?
Look at this.
Okay, Antonio. Give this to mommy, okay?
Watching.
Yeah, but that mommy.
Watching.
Give this to mommy.
Watching.
Okay, sit here.
Watch it.
So Antonio's here with me again.
Watch.
And
Watch it. Watch it.
I don't know your mom's password, sweetie.
What's the phone?
Look, you're live.
Watch it. Watch it.
Give it to mommy. Give it to mommy. I'll unlock it for you, okay? Go. Give it to mommy. Go on, Antonio. So, anyways, fish a porta. Oh, my daughter's here too. Wow. Anyways, I got the whole family here. Toronto home prices gains to beat Canadian cities next year, says Rolla Page. So, prices to raise almost 7%, beating Vancouver, Montreal, and the national average. So, we're being told that prices are going down in Vancouver and it's dropping, and then they're telling us another thing. You know what I'm saying? So, that's becoming a big problem. And Toronto, new stricter mortgage rules are expected to slow the housing market next year, but prices are still expected to rise 5%. But prices already went up like 70%. So it's really hard to kind of forecast what's happening here. You're getting told one thing from these people, and then you're getting told another thing from some other people. And it's really hard to understand why things and then it confuses the people. So people are saying, okay, people are commenting here. Can you trust the salesman? Real estate agent too, and lawyer. It's like, it's not trust per se. It's, do you need a salesman anymore with technology? Do you really need someone to drive you to a house and show it to you? I mean, nowadays, they should have an app where you're the salesman, you look at what's for sale, you call ahead to the house, you tell them what time you're coming, and then you sign up some sort of application so they know you're not just some stalker or some weirdo. Go through a process, then they find out that, yes, you want to buy, and then you just go see the house yourself. Holy max. You know? So someone's commenting here, the unemployment rate is down 5.8% in Canada's Western province. The lowest of all provinces. For the first time in comparisons, it began since in 1976. That's from my man Gemini King. Now, why was the other article saying it's a booming economy? So, Margaret O'Brien, looks like my house, my grandchildren, and the dog and the cat turn up at any time. Yeah, that's what's happening here. But I love it. I love the whole family aspect. I love family. It's the best. Okay, Buddy is commenting here. Kenny, I was in the UK and noticed that home prices were way higher than you could borrow. Much more. Advertisements for financing 1.5 million pounds. The bubble might expand more before anything pops. So who believes that the bubble will expand even more? Like, I'm talking rocket fuel. Like, going to the average home in Vancouver is well, it already is that much. The average home in Vancouver is $9 million. So, and then people are still making 70 large a year. But don't worry, we can put you on a 5,000-year repayment plan. So let's keep going here. There's lots of people commenting here. Okay. Okay, someone's commenting. Should a millennial with a average income buy now or wait? I think, to be honest with you, I am not a financial advisor. I'm not a housing advisor. I'm not even a dinnering advisor. I can't even advise you what to have for dinner. But what I could tell you from what I'm seeing is I wouldn't jump on the wagon right now. I wouldn't jump on the wagon. I'd let it pass and say, yeah, you know what? I'll take the next wagon and see what happens. Because this stuff happens in cycles, right? And it doesn't take a friggin' economist with 12 degrees that can read 4 different languages explain this to you. Everything happens in cycles. And if you are a millennial now, I mean, if you're buying to lay roots and to raise a family, and if the house is worth less than what you bought it for 5 years from now, but you don't care because you just want a place to live, go ahead and buy. But if you care about paying for something worth less than what you bought it for, then I would kind of worry, you know what I'm saying? I would worry big time because that's what's going to be happening in the next year or two. Because I bought because a friend passed and left a fixer-upper. However, Royal LePage reports that 2018 will be slow for sale in Toronto market, but housing prices will rise, BNN reports. So, prices to beat. Toronto prices to rise almost 7%, beating Vancouver, Montreal, and the national average. Let's move on. Home prices set to climb on buyer demand in GTA forecast. Again, another tie-in. Home prices in Canada are expected to climb almost 5% next year as buyer demand in Greater Toronto area overwhelms the impact of tougher mortgage qualification rules. according to Roy LePage, forecaster for Canada's housing market. Roy LePage has kicked off the season of 2018 housing forecast with a relatively optimistic outlook, predicting fairly modest impacts for new rules taking effect January 1st that will require buyers to meet higher stress test hurdle to qualify for mortgage. The problem is, why didn't they put this stress testing 10 years ago? You know, why are they doing this now? It's like buying an alarm for your car after it gets stolen. Oh, my car got robbed. Well, I'm going to throw an alarm on it now. It's like robbing Peter to pay Paul. I don't get it. Roy LePage Chief Executive Officer Phil Soper expects slower markets in the first half of 2018 as buyers adjust to the new rules. He said that natural supply and demand forces will ultimately triumph over regulatory tinkering. Whatever the hell that was supposed to mean. So read also, home prices fall on Ontario weakness. So the article's saying it's going, you know, home prices set to climb by buyer demand. And then home prices fall on Ontario weakness. Yes, Buddy is saying mortgage translated from French means death pledge. I thought it meant death grip, like death grip, but maybe I'm wrong. I'm always wrong. Don't ever quote anything I say. And then this from the Observer. Look at this. East York housing prices poised to bounce back next year. So they're huge optimistic in the Greater Toronto area. Huge optimism. Oh, it's gonna bounce back. It's gonna be good. You know what I'm saying? Property could increase by 5% during 2018. Okay. Were they trying to mention property or interest rates? Because that's another can of worms. That none of these articles want to open this up. Canada's housing risks haven't gone away. They've just moved to the shadows. This is like a Halloween bedtime story. New rules that make it tougher to get a mortgage are driving borrowers to a lending market where there is less oversight and regulation. So going into secondary markets and shadowy markets and private lenders. The risk of the financial system from tapped out borrowers is merely shifting this time to a market where there's no oversight from the country's national bank regulator and new stress test rules don't apply. So they're doing it off the books. And that's fantastic. So what happens when they do things off the books? Our data gets screwed. Nobody knows what's selling and buying unless you go through other systems like MLS and all that other stuff. But this is horrible. Mortgage broker Samantha Brooks is trying to figure out how to get one of her clients out of a housing-fueled debt hole. The couple of a 59-year-old Toronto city worker and her husband, 58, have so much debt that they've stopped making payments on the $410,000 mortgage for their suburban home. They wanted to refinance, but regulations imposed last year will disqualify them in a few weeks. They won't even qualify for an uninsured loan at the alternative lender as more rules come into effect. They opted for a third route, adding a second mortgage with the interest rate of 10.5%. Holy crap. So if you get a second mortgage for 100 large, that's $10,500 a year in finance charges, roughly, on 100 grand. I'm going to close this. People need solutions. It could be temporary, but at least they have a home over their heads. So this is good. This part right here. We're transferring risk from the regulated segment to the unregulated segment of the market. Benjamin Tal, Deputy Chief Economist of Canada, Imperial Bank of Commerce, said by phone from Toronto, if we have a significant correction, clearly the unregulated markets will suffer even more because that's where the first casualties will be, and then you will see it elsewhere. And this is 1 trillion% right. This guy's got it in the bag. He's right. Yeah, so basically someone living in Toronto could sell their $1 million home and buy an equivalent home in Windsor and have 600 large to play with. Now, let me tell you something. It's the same thing with me. Watch my Living the Dream series. Go to my channel, scroll down, you see a Living the Dream with 70, 80 videos. There's one that I'm doing, like redoing it, refining it with 2 episodes. It's on season 1, episode 2. Go to the big series. I had a huge down payment to put down I had a huge down payment to put down in Vancouver, and I said, you know what? I'm going to move to a small town. So I moved to this small cowboy town here called Merritt, BC. And it's a little tumbleweed town. It's fun. I like it. It's never a dull moment here. It's always entertaining. And it's quiet. Very quiet. You could sleep well at night. And to be really frank with you guys, I had some money to play with because that down payment I was going to put down on the house in Vancouver just bought me this one. And left me with money to play with too. So, you know, which is nice, you know. But yeah, they're not buying a $600K home. No, I understand. They sell in Toronto for $1 million, buy a house in Windsor for $300,000, and then have the other $600,000-700,000 left over to play with. I get it. I know what they're saying, but I'm saying I did the same thing. I was gonna buy. I had this down payment ready to go, and then when I went to go see the house again, it either sold or it went up an extra $60,000. And it's like, you know what? No, I can live a good life outside the big city. I don't need to be part of a big city to reach out or to network. You have social media network. You don't need to be part of a city. So let's move on. Planning to buy a home? 5 things. Okay, millennial, where are you? Jason, listen to this. Planning to buy a home? 5 things to know about the 2018 housing market. Are you thinking about buying a home in 2018? You're not alone. Across the country, lots of people are trying to decide whether to make that leap into the home ownership next year. So since 2017 is coming to a close, we decided to write up our thoughts on whether the housing market stands where it stands today and what you should look for in 2018. In calibration with Yunson Home Ownership Investors, our analysis is based on the 2017 Unison Investment Management Report. Keep reading for an overview of the top 5 things you know. So this is for the U.S. Price trends, home prices, economic trends by city. So if you're living in Canada, you could do that on yourself. And then let's go to page 2 here. And then so these are the places that are what's happening. Like, remember Seattle, guys? I told you it's off the hook. Look at Portland's up there, San Diego, Detroit's moving up, eh? Wow. Denver, Dallas, Phoenix, San Francisco. Wow. I know Seattle and Portland right now. I got some articles from there. Those cities. So there's a lot of, you know what? I say sit back and wait. Doesn't hurt. You waited this long. If you waited this long and you hadn't bought, relax. Breathe. So these are people, I guess, looking at future investments here. Condos to buy up. A Bitcoin crash, a burst in housing bubble, giant bank sees 30 risks in the market for 2018. This was sent to me like a week and a half ago on my Facebook. Guys, go to the top of my page, follow me on Instagram, message me on Instagram. I get messages all the time on Instagram. Wall Street has been cranking out 2018 outlooks as 2017 winds down. Plenty of them are super wordy and conventional. So when a reflection of the upcoming year fits on a single page, it deserves a little attention. So let's move down to the single page right here. You can look at the article yourself. It's actually very good. I really recommend you to look at this. It's called The Bitcoin Crash, a Burst in Housing Bubble, a Giant Bank Sees 30 Risks of Markets for 2018. So this goes into the whole world. So 30 risks to the market in 2018. U.S. inflation moving higher in 2018 second quarter. EBC signaling an exit in 2018, second quarter of 2018. let me just see here. New Fed leadership, no. German inflation, I don't think so. Okay, right here. This one is good. Negative rates in EU govies coming to an end. Impact on global markets. That is a big deal. That is huge deal. That's good. It's on the list. I'm happy it's on the list here. Let me see what else. No. U.S. equity market correction. Jump in volatility because higher inflation, geopolitical shocks, or slowing global central bank. Yeah. Oh, number 13. Bitcoin crash, confidence impact on retail investors. Yeah, Bitcoin crash is huge because it's at what, 20, I don't even know, it's at ridiculous numbers right now. Number 14 just says North Korea. Doesn't even say North Korean president, North Korean testing, North Korea as a country. It just says North Korea. Number 15, bigger positive impact of U.S. tax reform than expected. That is a big one. Number 15. Let me see. U.S. No. Brexit development. Number 20. I don't think so. Oh, number 21. New government in the U.K. That one could make a... just going through this here. Russian presidential election at number 25. I don't think so. Commodity prices higher, yes. Here we go. Housing bubble bursting in Canada or Australia is number 27. I think the housing bubble bursting, and then at number 28 is housing bubble bursting in Sweden or Norway. Housing bubble bursting in China and associated China equity market correction. And then China harder landing in economy markets currently expected. So guys, it's a really good list. It's of 30 things. It's good because number 27, 28, 29, and 30 are the most important to me. Because if the housing bubble bursts in Canada and or Australia, you'll see a huge domino effect. But this housing crisis will affect every human being on earth will be affected by this housing crisis. I think it will trigger into bigger catastrophic problems from this damn housing problem that we're living in right now. Every human being will be affected. Everybody. Whether it's mostly negative, but some people will walk away with their pockets full of money. The usual term. You owe $1, somebody has $1. If you owe $10,000, that means someone's $10,000 richer somewhere else. That's just usually how it works. So let's move on. Seattle might be the next San Francisco. Here's how the two major tech hubs compare. So Seattle's out of control. San Francisco has always been like this. San Francisco has been through a couple of housing booms and cycles in the last 22 years. They've been really tightening the screws in the last year, trying to find out, because California is seeing a mass exodus of millennials and youth leaving the state. Cost of living is just, in the West Coast is just out of control. Seattle and San Francisco have been at the epicenter of the West Coast tech boom since the .com era. Today, both cities are home to some of the most influential companies in tech. Seattle with Microsoft and Amazon, and San Francisco with Twitter, Airbnb, Lyft, and what's Lyft? L-Y-F-T. Lyft? And Uber. As the tech industry's influence continues to grow, San Francisco and Seattle have faced comparison in recent months. If you work in tech, which city would make a better home? Here's an overview of how the two metropolises compare. So this is a really good article. It's more expensive to live in San Francisco than Seattle right now. San Francisco, I've been there a few times. I drove there a few times, actually, just for the sake of driving there. And it's a historical city. It's aged, but it's beautiful. It's got it's a very natural vibe. It's a city that's I don't know. I've been there. I've spent a week here and then drive down, spend 2 weeks, and then drive down again a year later, spend a week. And Seattle's it's historical and it's beautiful. That historical old look, you know. It is estimated that living in San Francisco will cost you nearly a quarter more than living in Seattle. San Francisco housing costs aren't expected to wane anytime soon. And look at the Seattle, eh? Seattle, they're setting up these type of homes too, eh? Like they have in San Francisco, the painted ladies. Seattle's housing costs are on the rise, but they're not expected to supersede San Francisco's pricey housing anytime soon. Average monthly rent for a one-bedroom in Seattle will run you about $1,300 the U.S. That's about $1,500 Canadian, as opposed to San Francisco estimated $2,000 for a one-bedroom. Wow, house with roommates. You're in a one-bedroom house with room. Wow. I thought it was $2,000 for a one-bedroom condo. Okay, and don't expect to purchase property in either city. Both of these coastal tech meccas have very little real estate on the market. While it doesn't look like Seattle's housing costs will eclipse San Francisco's anytime in the near future, the city's housing market is falling asleep. Let's go to London. Oh, there's the guy with the hair again. This guy over here. He's got really cool hair. Bitcoin expert reveals 3-step secret to retire rich. London property prices to set a drop in 2018. Oh, wow. There's so many comments going through. Okay, let's start with M. Bartles. U.S. Fed raised their rate today. Canada will follow, not looking very positive for additional increase in property prices. But thought would be ability to hold par. Unlikely, saw the move in 81. That's 1981. And yes, if anyone remembers that time. And then TD Bank is at 3.39% for a 5-year fixed rate. And then someone else is saying, correct, Steve, but stress test is based on 4.89 points. Someone else is commenting, Mike Martins, what do you think will happen to the economy when minimum wage goes to $14 an hour? People will be paying more taxes because, you know, you make more, you pay more tax. People forget that. But economy-wise, it won't be enough being put back into the economy because people are still living within their, just basically having a roof over their head. Yes, it would be more of a cushion, but the cost of living will continue to increase. Economic-wise, it would help if people were out spending it and actually, you know, traveling and vacationing like human beings used to do 20 years ago. We used to do all kinds with our disposable income. Would it leave more disposable income if you're smart? Would it affect the economy? No. A lot of small businesses in the private sector will suffer. Layoffs, hours cut back, because the private sector jobs are dwindling right now and having a really hard time finding something a good paid job in the private sector is very hard. Would it affect? No. $14 is nice, but it would keep you going, you know. Someone else is calling. Canada must raise the rate anyway in 2018. Otherwise, Canadian investors will remove their money from Canada for better returns on their money. That's very true. I agree, Steve. But then, how many people get laid off? It would be like, see, I opened my own business and I set my business up for me to work alone. Would I hire somebody? I would love to hire somebody to cover for me 2-3 days of the week on a regular basis, and I would love to, but then it's just, you know, setting up the payroll and then CPP, IUI, unemployment, taxes, withholding, blah, blah, blah. It gets pretty pricey. It doesn't get easy, you know? And at $14 an hour, it would hurt, you know, a lot of private sector jobs. And That's just my opinion. That's what I think. Yes, you will see a little bit of money going back into the economy, but not enough. Because people are just getting by. And then the price of food goes up, and then the price of gas goes up, and then car insurance, and then it doesn't end. It's a never-ending story. Let's move on. Oh, 2018. Let's read this real quick here. London's property market is in for another rough ride next year. So at least they're saying in London it's not looking good. Where other cities we've been looking at, it's good. Economy is going good. London's property market is in for another rough ride next year, according to Rightmove. Home values in the capital are likely to fall another 2% in 2018 after a 1.8% decline this year. The real estate website operator said Monday in December alone, prices dropped 3.7% in London and by 2.6% nationally. The month usually sees a big seasonal slump. So right now it's low time in London for buying. November, December, January, February, March picks up again. They're using this as an excuse, saying, well, it is slow season right now. Let's wait till March, April, and then we can look at... I think it's going to continue. I think the trend's going to go right through 2018 and eventually pop. So all you Londoners out there watching, thanks for watching, guys. Australia's housing market will cool rather than crash next year unless there's a global shock. Back to the list I read you for top 30 things that could screw up the market in 2018. That's a really good list. Read that list and see what you guys think. Comment below in the comment section of the 30 things that are on that list. What you think is the most thing. I think it's the housing. Any housing crash will create a domino effect. And that negative interest rate thing in Europe goes south and things just don't work out, right? So let's see what happens here, Australia. I wonder where that is. There's a bunch of blocks everywhere here. A bunch of kids playing there. Australian house price growth is slowing. Auction clearance rates are falling and housing finance is also starting to soften. All pointing to cooling in the broader housing market after years of strong price growth. The question that many are now asking is whether this slowdown will lead to outright price declines, as has been in some Australian capitals recently. Remember, guys, we've been following Australia? Or whether this slowdown, like so many others before, will be modest in scale. The chief Australia and New Zealand economist at HSBC, Hong Kong, Shanghai, Bank of China. The housing market is likely to experience a soft landing in 2018 unless there's a global shock. We do not expect a sharp decline in housing prices, he says. Although we see the RBA beginning to lift its policy in 2018, we expect only a slow pace of crash rate tightening and some relaxation. Relaxing, blah blah blah. I think it's just going to keep declining. 5 tips for spotting the start of a housing bubble. Woo! Okay, let's see. People are commenting. Unemployment will go up. Yeah, of course, unemployment. That was from the last article. 5 tips for spotting the start of a housing bubble. The concern over the U.S. housing market entering another bubble seems logical, so let's look at it. The return of subprime lending. We read that 3 articles ago. The return of subprime lending. That's 1. Unhealthy leverage. That's, yeah, low down payment, borrowing heavily, equity, cashing out, tapping out your equity. Very common thing that's happening. 3, wage growth falling behind living expenses. Eureka! This article is on par. Yes, that is happening too. House flipping becomes the norm. Man, who wrote this damn thing? Who the hell wrote this thing? Okay, it's photo. It's by Robert Clark. Robert Clark from Buzz News Canada. Thank you for sharing this. But these are all the symptoms, and this is what I've been talking about. The return of subprime lending, unhealthy leveraging, people running off the coattails off their equity, Wage growth falling behind living expenses, people asking about minimum wage going up, and house flipping becomes the norm, speculators coming into the market, and rising interest rates, which is happening to us right now. So everything on this article is right there. Plain sight. Plain sight. Good article, guys. Really good article. Let's move on. Will the end of the housing boom come with a bang or a whimper? This is by Greg Jericho from the Guardian. And this is from Australia, by the way. Whether the slowing price of growth of apartments will lead to similar slowing of established houses, such as that their affordability improves, remain to be seen. The Australian economy for the past 4 years has been dominated by two booms: the end of the mining investment and the housing price one. The latest GDP figures suggest that the transition from the end of the mining boom has now occurred, and the latest housing price figures released this week suggest we have also reached the end of the housing boom. Since the RBA began cutting interest rates, the housing boom has mostly been about Sydney and a lesser extent of Melbourne. So it is significant that the latest residential housing price data released on Tuesday showed that the housing price in Sydney fell 1.4%, the biggest fall since December 2015. Elsewhere, Melbourne residential prices slowed dramatically, up just 1.1% compared to 3% in the June quarter, and prices in Perth continue to fall as they are nearly 10% on the 2014 levels, while in Hobart prices were very solid 3.4%. This means that the overall residential prices across the country were down 0.2%, the biggest fall since March of last year. So I'm seeing it, guys. We're seeing it. It's happening right before our eyes. It's a long article. Greg here writes a lot of these long, in-depth articles with analysis and all this stuff that you can look into and shows proof. Actually does the work and finds the proof. And where was I here? How do Sydney's housing values compare to other capitals? This is really cool. So this is a really good article. It goes into different cities in Australia, comparing to other major cities. With a recorded median home value of $904,000 in November, Sydney still reigns as Australia's most expensive capital city housing market based on the latest report. Industry expert CoreLogic head of research Cameron Kusher said that save short period in 2006-2007, Sydney has consistently been the costliest market in the country. So it goes here. Meanwhile, Sydney's current median is 92% higher than Perth's $463,000 median home value, and double the amount of Darwin and Hobart and Adelaide. I always wanted to go to Darwin. If anyone lives out there, let me know. I'll come visit you. However, this dwelling values are beginning to fall in Sydney after a substantial increase over recent years. Assuming these falls continue, the premium relative to other capital cities is likely to decline, he said. So I'll keep my hand on the button there, or watching over what's happening in. So they're trying to tell you things, and you're being told one thing, and the Express. Housing market stabilizes in November as North continues to outstrip London. This article should have been on the other side of where the London section was. But you know what, guys? This is crazy. This has gotten to a point where the mainstream media and other news outlets have to report on this, even though they really don't want to, or they're being told not to, but they kind of have to because it's such a big deal. And I've been talking about this, for like 5-6 years now. I remember the first video I did, and it actually got taken down. Actually, some of the first videos I did were just were demonetized and then flagged for removal. I can't find some of my first videos I made, and you know, and I was just doing the talking the talk, just asking questions, you know, because I think the mistake is we're not doing the right things is because we're not asking the right questions, and that sometimes leads to failure. You know, that's my opinion, right? And yeah, I didn't have time for open lines tonight. I promise, guys, next week we'll do a full open line segment. Last week we had a lot of open lines. If you want to go back to last week's show, I had people calling in from Ireland. I had people calling in from Australia, people calling in from Ontario, I had people calling in from Vancouver area, people calling in from the stateside. A lot of good callers calling in, and Saskatoon. So next week, if you tune in, I'll have open lines the whole show. We'll have open line discussion. I'll put up 1 or 2 articles. I'll keep it simple. And I'll read your comments as we go. And from there, people could just call in. I'm trying to get this damn... Oh, you know what? I think I got the phone system fixed, to be honest with you guys. Because I got the computer beside me is another computer desk here. I think I'm going to plug in the phone on another computer and run the system on a separate computer, allowing people's phone numbers not to show up on the screen. I tried calling those guys over at Magic Jack. It's like, how do you remove the phone number from appearing? Oh, that's for your protection, sir, so you know who's calling. I'm like, I could just check my call display on the phone, too. Well, sir, that's a good thing to protect you. I'm like, it is. But I'm going to have to run a separate system, which I have. So, caller from Saskatoon had the most Canadian accent I've ever heard. People are, I'll respect that unless he says to call now. Yeah, no, it's not that I don't want calls tonight. It's just been here for an hour and 10 minutes, and I wanted to go over some of these articles because you're getting a back and forth, you know. You got some articles telling you kind of what to look for, hinting on what to look for, not really giving you the story. And then you got some articles telling you, hey, this is all good. You know, yeah. I'm going to get this Magic Jack, like I said, hooked up to the other computer here in my office. And then I'll run the wire here. And then we'll run a separate system just for the phone systems. And I'll do an open line discussion next Wednesday. If everything's okay, you know, if everything, I mean, if I don't have a crisis in the house or something happens or whatever, I will be here next Wednesday for you guys. And Steve, call in next Wednesday. And everybody else on the show, if you want to call in next Wednesday, I'll be open for you guys. Walking Journey likes to call in. Mario DeCettes likes to call in. Nick likes to call in. A lot of people like to call in. I'll have open lines, I promise, next week. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching. And if you're just tuning in, just scroll back to the beginning of the show. And I want to thank you guys for watching and tuning in to Trends in the Housing Market for this week. And if you guys have any good articles, find me on Instagram. Just go to the top of my YouTube channel. You'll find me. Yeah, you know what? I'll have Steve the Plumber on next week. And he's telling me that there's a lot happening in Toronto. And yeah, Steve, if you could call me from a proper fixed landline and crank the volume and talk slow. Because I noticed that a lot of the phone calls that come through are pretty muffled. And I want to make sure everyone can hear what people want to say, right? Anyways, have a good night, guys. Godspeed. Thanks for watching. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button and share this and get this out there.